Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I just thought I'd pop by today and just do another project just because. And I'm going to use one of my older sets. So what I've done is I've got a piece of Pink Frog Smooth card which is 4 inches by 6 inches, which is the same size as the snippets. And I want to show that, you know, with that size card you can still make a beautiful card as well, or you could turn this into a journal page, or you could even stick these into your journal like we do the snippets, and you could have a journal where you've done card designs and just stick those card designs in the journal so that you can refer back to them for ideas. So what I've done is I've placed 2 pieces of low tack tape just onto my card. I've placed the low tack tape onto my skin just so that it makes it a little more low tack, just so that you can see them on there. So just 2 pieces I've placed on there. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's on my desk. So I'm using Salty Ocean. So what I'm going to do is take some water. You can have a jar of water if you wish, because it'll make it a lot easier. And I'm just going to take my flat brush and I'm just going to add some water just on the bottom and on the top. So I'm just literally adding water. That's all I'm doing. Just adding some water and a little bit of a hair as well, because that adds to the texture. So let's just grab a little piece of kitchen roll. I've got my brew with me. So I've got a lovely cup of tea, which is really nice. And what I have to do is make sure that it's put far away, because what Tracy does is knocks it over, because I'm good like that. Now I was going to use my Salty Ocean Distress Oxide. I wonder if I've got a re-inker. Don't think I have. No, it's funny, I was going to use a re-inker, but believe it or not, I don't have Salty Ocean re-inker. So I'm going to use the ink pad and just bring that down here, and then I'm just going to pick this up, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of the Salty Ocean. If you want to create a nice quick background, this works perfectly. I don't have to think about it too much, and it doesn't matter if some seeps under your low tack tape. That's absolutely fine. It just adds to the effect a little bit. So let's just pick up a little bit more of that water. So as you can see, I'm not doing anything particularly, you know, awe-inspiring. I'm just adding that to there. So I'm just going to rinse my brush because I haven't got a jar of water here. And what I'm going to do is just spritz the ink with water. And I'm just going to give that a few seconds to do its thing. Now, when you're not doing a video, you know, when you're not teaching or whatever, you can allow that to dry naturally. And you can give it time to dry. Now, what you want is you want it to sort of bleed under the washi a little bit, just because it adds to the effect. Now, obviously, if you don't want it to bleed underneath, then you need to sort of make sure that that's secure down, or you could use some masking tape. But I like the effect when it bleeds a little bit, but it has to bleed quite naturally because then it looks more natural. So what I'm going to do now is to stop that doing what it's doing. So the minute you put heat on it, it will stop reacting. Because as I sit here talking and waffling, this is doing more reacting. And the longer you leave it, the more this will bleed in and the more that will work out. But obviously for this occasion, I'm going to stop that and just start heating. So I'm sort of stopping it in its tracks now so that it doesn't move anymore. And then you can look at your composition and think, well, I just want a little bit off there. If you let this dry naturally, this area here will be quite dark. But I don't want any dark areas. I want some nice vibrancy and instantly I've stopped it doing anything more. So I've stopped it moving now. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't then still react it. So you can still add water after the event and it'll still continue to react. So you can just dab it and you can still lift up colour just so it's quite, you know, it's really workable. So let's just give that another heat. Now when you heat with your heat tool, obviously that causes the card to bend. So what I like to do is just turn it over, heat it from the other side, turn it back again. Turn it back again, she says confidently. Let's move that bit of water. Place it back down again and just heat again. You know, and I often do a bit of faffing with my cards. You know, they don't always happen in 5 minutes. It takes a little bit of prep. Right. Let's just place that here now. So what I've got now is I've got a lovely sort of, a lovely blue, a lovely vibrancy, and it works really nicely. And if your card's a little bit bent, tell the card who's boss and just bend it back a little bit. There we go. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use my stamp set that you can't see because I've folded over the top of the stamp. I'm going to be using my Temporal. And I absolutely adore this stamp. I love the detail. I love the fact that it can be broken up. You've got some bold elements. The clocks are just stunning. And I've got lots of stamps that go with these as well. So lots of stamps that go with these. This is stamp set 733. So I'm going to use this one. So let's just put this back in its packaging. These wallets, I often get asked, these are literally plastic wallets with press studs that I get from Amazon. Lots of places have them, but I find them quite nicely for storing the stamps because I can just put my cut out pieces in there as well. Plus I don't get in a total mess. Right, Tracy's definitely got a bigger acrylic block somewhere. Yes, she has. So let's move this out of the way. You can tell I was using a different stamp. I've got so many things on the go. I don't know whether you do that. When I've got deadlines, I've got different things all over the place. I don't like to forget my older stamps. I like to use them. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling the acetate here. I'm not pulling the stamp. So I'm pulling that acetate. And before you do anything with your stamp, let's just place this on the acrylic block. Place that on there. And I'm using an A5 acrylic block. I don't want to use the A6 one because this will fill the A6 block. And because it'll fill it, I haven't got enough room to lever that stamp, just so that I can use the flexibility in the acrylic block. And also I can't put my stamp on the acrylic block straight because it's one of those mornings. So what I can do now is I can take my acetate, which is a good guide, and you can judge where you want to put your imagery. So I can see where my acetate is here, and I can see where I want it, and this is going to make this stamp look a little bit different, which I love. So you can see where you're going. So I've got my stamp here, and you can judge where you want to go. What you need is you need a really good ink. So I'm using VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and this stamp's got a lot of detail in. So what you need to do is you need to give it a little bit more attention. All that means is you do a little bit more tapping. So just tap it a little bit more. I know there are ladies out there that sort of swipe it across like this, but for me, I prefer to tap all over the stamp, because if I swipe over, I still miss bits. I like to tap just to make sure that I've got a good even layer of ink. But whatever works for you, works for you. You know, there are always different ways to do things. So I've got a nice juicy ink pad. with a good open time. So what I'm going to do now is move everything out of the way, or else we can't do anything. And then I'm going to just decide where I want my stamp. There we go. So I'm going to place it here. Now you've got that Distress Oxide on there, which really then sort of creates sort of like a barrier before you touch the white card. So it's less absorbent. So because of that Distress Oxide ink and the fact that the card then is less absorbent because it's already got a layer of oxide on there, you need to just give that ink a little bit of time just to absorb into the card. So just give that a little bit of time. Now these stamps, you can find these stamps on the AALLandCreate website, AALLandCreate.com. You can find these stamps, and also some of the stockists still have it in stock. But if you're unsure, go to the AALLandCreate website. They have it in stock, and they have a list of stockists as well. So let's just allow that to sit on there, and you can see I'm not rushing the process. So just lever that acrylic block, but as I'm levering the acrylic block, you can see I always leave a hand in place. So I always leave a hand in there. Now at the moment, obviously you can't see because I've got the low tack tape on there. So let's grab a piece of copy paper. I always find it difficult to grab just one piece of copy paper. They always stick together. So what I'm going to do then is just give that a blot. Now, where the ink is on your low tack tape, that's going to be that, you know, that's not absorbent, so it's going to pick a lot of ink up. Can you see? It's only picked ink up from where the low tack tape is. But you can see how wet that low tack tape is. Now what you could do is you could try and save the low tack tape, and you could use matte medium on there. But as you can see, when I remove that, you can see that you've got this area that is free. So what I'm going to do then is take my Salty Ocean, and I'm just going to use a brush. And I'm just going to apply a little bit of ink. Now, what I'm showing you here is, if you apply the ink, your Salty Ocean ink, and try to blend it over here, which is what I'm trying to show you, you're just going to pick up that ink. So what you need to do, because you don't want to blend the black on there, so what I'm going to do is just wipe the black ink away from the washi tape. So I just wipe that away. It just means then I'm not going to blend that ink onto my card. So I've just removed that black. So now you can see where that open area is. So I'm just going to take my brush and this Salty Ocean ink, and then I can start on here, which is my washi tape, and then just blend just a little bit of that colour just across the edges, and just build up the blending. Come down to the bottom and just blend that. So you're just building up a little bit of that layer of colour just across the edges. There we go. So if we remove our low tack tape now, you can remove it nice and carefully. And you can see I'm sort of folding it down just so it peels away nice and carefully. excuse me, had a tickle then. So just, but because I applied that to my skin, just so that it was a little more low tack. There we go. Just make sure that your hands are clean. You don't want to place any ink or anything on there. And let's just wipe this. And you can see what we have at the moment. So you can see I've then got this opening that I can add whatever I wish. So we'll just place that on one side. I do apologise. Typical to have a tickle. That's what happens when you talk too much. So I've got some scrap pieces of card here. And what I'm going to do is just ink my little butterfly that isn't so little. I know this is an A6 stamp set, but it definitely has so much wonderful detail for an A6 stamp set. It's amazing. So what I'm going to do is just stamp the butterfly. Let's make sure you keep that in shot. Now I've got no Distress Oxide on there. So because I've got no Distress Oxide on there, that means that the card is more absorbent. It's a smooth card from Pink Frog, so because it's a smooth card, obviously it's smooth on the surface, so that's why sometimes I blot the imagery, especially if I'm going to colour. If I'm going to colour something, I often blot. So just blot that. There we go. Nothing much has come off there, but I still blot before I colour. But you can see, if you just wanted that as a card, you could just add a little bit of colour and a sentiment, and you could just have it like that. You don't have to use the whole image. So I'm just going to get my pens. Just so. Let's grab some colours here. So Carmine, Burnt Sienna. There we go. So we've got some nice vibrant colours. I'm using my Ecolines because they're on my desk. So why not use them? I don't always reach for something else. So I've got Carmine, which is 318. I have got Burnt Sienna, 411. And I've got Reddish Brown, 422. So for me, I look at it as a light, medium, dark. So what I'm going to do is just add some of that, spit it out, Burnt Sienna. So we've got some of that Burnt Sienna. And I just want to check if I've got a bit of a brighter orange. So I've got some of that Burnt Sienna. And I'm just going to add a bit of Vermilion, 311. Just to bring in a little bit more of the vibrancy with the Vermilion. Just to bring in a little bit more of that. And you can see I'm colouring a little bit differently this time. So I've got the Vermilion, and then I'm going to go with a little bit of the Carmine. So add a bit of that Carmine. Just take the Carmine. And then I'm going to add a touch of the Reddish Brown, which is the very darkest colour. Then I'm going to go back to the lightest, which is the Vermilion, which is 311. And I'm going to drag that colour out a little bit more. Let's add a little bit down here. A little bit. Down there. So I'm just dragging that colour out a little bit more. Okay. Then just going back in to layer then the Carmine. just a little bit more of that colour. And what I'm doing is I'm sort of blending them on the card before I water out the colour. So let's grab our water brush, which, because I've had so much stuff all over the desk, is nowhere to be seen. So let me just make sure that is clean, which by now you know it's never clean in the Tracy household, because she does that many cards with that many different colours. I have no idea, because I'm going from one project to another constantly. So let's just, no, we need more water than that. So you can use your paint palettes, etc. So I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to blend out a little bit of that colour. And what you'll see is I just get a wash of that blend, just a light wash of the blend. So what I'm going to do now is go back to my carmine. So I'm going to use my carmine, and I'm going to add a little bit more vibrancy to the butterfly. So I'm using the same colours, but because it's watered down, it's like a tone of the same colour. And it's nice and wet on there now. So because it's wet on there, what I can do now is I can go back in with the carmine, and you can dab the colour back on there, and it starts to wick out just to add more colour. So I just want the vermilion, and it will just start to wick out. There we go. And then I'm going to use that vermilion and just blend out a little bit more of that colour. Now you just, obviously when you're colouring, the more time you spend on the colouring, the better effect you get. If you rush it, you're not going to get that depth of colour. So I'm going round now, adding a little bit of the carmine to the edges of this, just so that it looks like it's got a bit of depth at the edges as well. Now, when I'm doing a YouTube video, I feel that there are no time constraints, because if you don't want to create something that, you know, is over half an hour long, then just stop and then come back at another day and do it at a different stage. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the reddish brown and just add some really dark touches, just so that we've got that depth. I'm just sort of dabbing that on there. There we go. Now, there's no point me trying to add any white touches to that, because it's soaking wet. So you're not going to get anywhere with your white touches, and you can see how wet it is here. So I need it to dry a little bit before I can add those white touches. So what we can do is we cut out our butterfly, and I'm going to leave a little touch of white. And I don't need to cut out the antennae. I can just go around the body. And it's one of those butterflies that when it's coloured, it's just stunning. You can use your favourite colours. You know, if these are not your cup of tea, you use the colours that you know, make you happy. So just cut this out. There we go. The one advantage of when the card's a little bit moist, you can definitely sort of bend it a little bit and add a little bit of life, but don't work with it too much, because you'll just end up tearing your card. Let's just cut that out. Now, doesn't that look lovely? With just a little white border and a touch of colour. Let's bring in our card just so we can see where we're going so far. So you can see the minute you've got that beautiful, but the minute you add that, it just pow. It really gives some life. It really works beautifully. I just think that works really nicely. Okay. So let's now take this bottom clock here. So we'll ink that bottom clock. And what you've got to think is, with this clock, imagine this clock with some of your flowers. So you can cut this clock out and add it with some of your florals as well. So just imagine that. Just work really nicely. Just, you can see I never rush that either. I still give that time to soak in there, mainly because you've got this black area here and you can't just plonk it on your card and then lift it up straight away. You know, you need to give it a little bit of time. But for me, look at that for an image. Now, I just think that is stunning. Just makes me so happy. I'm going to cut this one out so it's already cut out. Let's leave a little white border. And I'm using my Pergamano scissors. You can use nail scissors or whatever you find simple for cutting out your footy cut pieces. There we go. Very easy to cut out. So nice and simple to cut out. There we go. And now we're going to add a little bit of colour to this in exactly the same way. So we're going to add our vermilion. And have you noticed when I'm sort of doing petals, I flick, but with this clock, with it going round, I sort of going round with a circular motion. So the vermilion, then I'm going to add a bit of the burnt sienna, so I'll bring that out a little bit, and then I'm going to go with the carmine, just to add a little bit of the carmine. Go back to the burnt sienna and just bring out that colour a little bit more. Then go with the vermilion again and then bring out that a little bit more. And then the darkest colour, reddish brown, just at the very edges. Okay, so let's go in now with our lightest colour. Turn this around and go in to the colour. Now you need to make sure that you've got a card that will allow you to use that moisture. And blend it out to sort of nothing. Now, if there's a certain colour you want to add more of, like I want to add more of the carmine, so I'm going to go in with a little bit more of the carmine. You can, if you wish, you can, now you've got the card nice and wet, just dab that carmine and it starts to bleed out. Then go back with the vermilion, just to add the richer, darker colour. And I've got some nice water on there now, so it'll blend out nicely. There we go. Remove some of the colour as you start to lighten that out. There we go. And I love the simplicity and ease of use of the Ecoline pens. Makes me look good. So what I can do now is add, you can see the clock is just half there, but I'm bringing it back in to the design like so, so that we've got this. Okay, so then just one little final touch now. There's a bit more scrap card. Can we use that bit? Let's use every bit of scrap card. I want this little clock here. Use that little clock, that little tiny one there, just at the top. There we go. And again, this in itself has still got the beautiful detail. Let's just cut that out. There we go. Cut round there. Again, just leaving a nice white border. Let's just cut that out. I've now got another little clock. So then I'm going to add the colour in the same way. So I'm going to start with that vermilion. And obviously I don't need as much colour on there because obviously it's a tinier image. So repeating the same process. Just adding my colours. I'm going to go with the lightest colour as before. I just get into the habit of putting the lids on. So now I'm just going to go back with a bit more of that red, just so it shows a little bit more. And then we'll go back with the wrong colour. We'll go back with the vermilion, the more orangey colour. Take off the extra and then you can just blend that out to nothing. There we go. Let's bring our card in just so you can see that is going to go there. But now I've got a little space that I can add a little bit of wording as well. And obviously, whilst we decide on that wording, these pieces are drying and we can add some touches of white. So I think I've used almost every piece from that card. Now there are also other stamps sort of in this range. I think I'm going to be using these on some snippets as well. So on stamp set Papillon 731, there's the word papillon and kaleidoscope of butterflies. And then I've got this one as well, which is 729. I've got Take Flight, The Beauty of Nature, Butterfly, Fly Free, Spread Your Wings. So it's just deciding what I want to use. So I think I'm going to use the papillon on 731 and use that word. Let's see if we can grab it out. There we go. Bring this in here. So just a nice word to add to our project. I've not stuck anything down, which is perfect because I can see exactly where I want everything. Let's make sure that you can actually see where I want everything. There we go. And even with a sentiment, I give that time just to soak in there. I don't even rush working with the sentiment. Let's place that back because we all know what will happen. It'll disappear. And then just give those hands a wipe just so that you don't get in a mess with your project. Just love this. Right, so we can take our pieces off now. Now obviously you would let yours dry a little bit more. What I'm going to do is dry mine a little bit. because I worked them quite a lot, and I just want to make sure that I can add those touches of white, because the touches of white really bring something to your project. But these are lovely, strong imagery, and the clock, you see, now I'm going to be obsessed with the clock. Honestly, I'm terrible. I get obsessed by certain imagery all of a sudden because I've just now had another thought, which I'll show you with the clock. Right. So we can now, add your white. We can say add your white bits. Just doesn't sound right, does it, when I say that? Add your white bits. Just doesn't sound right at all. So I'm going to, small things, I'm used small minds, you just have to ignore me. So I'm just going to add some touches of white, just to the butterfly, just here and there, just to give it some touches of white. And I'm just going to add sort of a little dot just to the wings, just to give it some highlights which really lift the design. Just going to add a little bit of white to our clock. And what I always do is, you know, when you sort of come to a project and you've left it, say, for 5 or 6 hours, I come back and add that white again, just so that it's added. So I'm going to use some pink, what's this? Not pink, white cotton. Pink. Oh, I am dangerous at times. So let's just pull out that cotton nice and loosely. And we can just add that cotton just to give me some texture and to diffuse the actual design. We're then going to add our butterfly. You see, now let me check the size. You know, when you look at something, you think, is that? Yeah, it is 4 by 6. You know, when you look at something, you think, did I get the size right? Well, you might not do. It's just that my poor little brain, sometimes when it comes to measurements, I'm absolutely paranoid. So I'm going to add a good dollop of the adhesive. Now, what you need to make sure is you press down that adhesive a little bit, just so that it captures that cotton. Now, if you want, if you're sending it to a friend, you don't have to give as much dimension. Or if, like me, you send it to a special friend, I put it in a box. You could even put this in a little frame if you wished. So I'm then going to add the clock, which again is also going to have a little bit of dimension. But this is what happens when I get creative. Other ideas come to mind. So that's what I love about being creative. Just using my pin flare, you can use your sticky pads, your ultra thick gel medium, whichever. I'm using this now just in my demonstrations because the pin flare just stays put, because it's quite chunky and it stays put. So we've got the card there. Let's move this out of the way. Let's grab some of the, no, that is not what I want. Let's grab my Posca pen. And let's just give that some splatters. I love splatters. If you don't add them. I love them because they bring vibrancy. But if you don't, please don't do that. Let's clean all this up. Oh, crikey. See, I've thought of another little idea as well, which I'm going to do. But then I'm going to add this. So this is 4 by 6 and I'm going up 1/4 of an inch each time. And what I'm going to do this time is just offset it so it's towards the left-hand side. Frantically look for my glue, which is straight in front of me, because that's what you do. When you're demonstrating, you lose everything. And Tracy has not had her lid on the glue, which is also something you do when you're a demonstrator. You keep forgetting that you need to put your lid on your glue. So you have to declog your glue. There we go. Look, you can see. Let me just grab that. I should just get another glue rather than do this while I'm on video. I probably will get another glue just to save me unclogging that for now. So I've got another glue. Let's make sure that this one works. Let's try again. There we go. So just adding my adhesive. Obviously it's better to add your adhesive when everything's dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this to the edge of my card. So it's towards the left and edge, not hedge with a H. Well, I have never been able to speak properly, but there you go. So I'm just adding that to the edge. You can see it's towards the left-hand edge. And I can't seem to say edge, I want to say hedge. That's because I spent too much time in the garden. Right, then I'm bringing in another white layer, which is 1/4 inch bigger. So this was 4 by 6, so 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. So I'll go up 1/4 inch intervals each time. Again, put that towards the edge. Just take your time whilst you're matting and layering. Don't rush that process. Just take your time doing that. Just add that. There we go. Just so we add that. And then I've got another black layer going up. Again, another 1/4 inch increment. Just add that here. And I just make sure I add a little bit of adhesive into the centre of the project, just so that it makes it much sturdier. So let's just place that just up. There we go. Make sure we go up a little bit. And yes, I talk to my piece of card. Then make sure you just press in the centre of your card so that all those layers stick down. I'm then going to add that to a 5 by 7 inch card blank. Let's just place that on there. And then we're going to add this to the edge as well. And I always find it better just to pick that up and get in contact with the card. Oh yes, I do like that, I have to say. Right, there we go. Let's make sure that lid's fastened on there. And just moving it to the side a little bit gives an alternative look. But doesn't that look lovely? So what I'm going to do now is move my rubbish everywhere. Frantically go in my cupboards. Where are you? Where's all my... There they are. Those of you that know me know that I love my vintage pieces. You know, I've got clock faces here, you know, and I've got some lovely pen nibs, some vintage pen nibs. Tim Holt's got some pen nibs, but I've got some vintage pen nibs here, so I can add little pen nibs. So just, you know, I'm just spending my time just seeing which of those pen nibs I like. So I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive just to the pen nib. Now, yes, it's a little bit, oh, we've got a little bit of a dry bit there. So sometimes I do a little bit of faffing I do apologise if that irritates you a little bit, but I'm a true faffy. That is part of the fun for me, is having a little faff. There we go. Let's make sure. And when you have vintage pieces, obviously nothing is straight. Like there's a bit here that isn't on there, so nothing is quite straight because it's a vintage piece. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of the Posca pen onto the pen nib, and I'm just going to add a little bit just to there, just so that my card is also into the project. So just so you can see, this is your card. Just absolutely love that. But I do want to show you another simple idea. I'm just going to add, where's my, so I just want to show you another simple idea before we switch off. So what size is this card? I don't even know what size this piece of card is. Hang on. Let's see what size this is. It's not even 4. Shall we get a 4x6? Yeah. Let's get a 4x6 piece of card. So just bear with me. Let's grab a 4x6. So 4. So let's just do a simple idea. If you want some scrap card, so say you want a nice simple idea. Scrap card. Let's take one of these clocks. So it's nice that you can use stamps in different ways. This is my scrap card. Yes, do you like I'm paranoid and I can't decide whether I'm using scrap card or what I'm using. Don't ask me why I stamped bang in the middle of the card when I could have used the edge of the card to save card. Don't ask. Right, so let's just allow that just to soak in there. But even that could be a card with just the word Papillon on there. Perfect. You could just add a tiny touch of colour. This is why stamps like this are so amazing. Right, so what I'm going to do is just cut out this image. Let's cut this out. You could also put a Christmas tree with the clock and then put Christmas time. You know, there's ways of bringing the stamps that you've got into your seasonal makes as well. You could add the robin with this and put Christmas time. So I've got my little clock. So I'm just giving you a nice, simple idea. So let's grab our colours again. Let's stick with those colours. We're not going to bring out any more products. We've got enough products out. So look at that, professional colouring, not. Don't click the lid on, Tracy, quite irritating. Then go with the darker. You can see nothing fancy, that's the burnt sienna. Then come in with the carmine. Bring in some of that carmine. Leave the lid off, Tracy, to save clicking the lids. Then a little bit of that darker colour. So we're going to grab our water brush. And don't forget, we're just going to do a simple idea to show you, just because you've got a simple, because you've got an A6 stamp that's a complete design, doesn't mean that you can't use it in different ways. So let's use a bit of that carmine. Come in with that carmine and bring a little bit more depth of colour. Go in with the carmine just to add a little bit more depth. Back in with the vermilion. And then go back in and blend that colour out. Okay, take off the excess and then you can blend that out to almost nothing. There we go. Nice and simple. Okay, so what we can do is we can add, now you're just creating a simple card. You're not going to do anything too complicated. So do I stick, yes, let's stick it down so it's 3D, yeah. Or no, no. Do you like how I talk to myself? So I'm sticking this down even though, as you can see, it's soaking wet. I've not dried it. So I'm just going to add this here. So just nice simple idea. If you want to change it up a little bit and not want to use any of the butterflies. So use your salty ocean. Remember to clean that brush because you can end up with disastrous colours if you use the orange mixed in with that blue. Okay, so we bring in the salty ocean and we're just going to go round, as you can see, just quickly go round with the darkness of colour. Okay, looks truly awful. So then blend it out and it looks so much better. And blend that out. Obviously you want a card that is going to blend out. Now spritz with water so that the colour just moves a little bit. So that just moves. That's it. You want it a bit more flowing. Just so that it starts to move a little bit. Okay. You want that colour to move. And guess what? Your ecolines then also move. Because they're reactive with water. So once you've got that to move, so it's quite watery, give that a dry. Because then once you give it a dry, you stop it doing any more moving. And give that a dry. So just take your time. Turn it over. So you've got a nice watery look now. Oh, do the reverse, Tracy. So let's just dry the reverse. So there's always ways to change up things with your stamp sets. Show that card who's boss and remind it where it goes. Okay. And then if I take my miniature stamp set 756, use any text you wish. I'm just using what I've got on my desk. There we go. And I'm just using my morning mist. Let's bring in that copy of paper. So bring in my morning mist. And I'm just going to stamp the morning mist very lightly on the paper, just to take off some of that ink, just so the ink is a little bit lighter. I don't want it too overpowering, so I'm just stamping a little bit of the excess ink, probably easier off the acrylic block because it's just easier to manipulate. There we go. If you take it off the acrylic block, it's a little bit more random as well. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding some text around the clock. I will lift it up because it's probably very difficult to see when you can't see the text because it's not quite dark enough. So I will lift that up for you. So just, there we go, and a little bit up there, that's it. And yes, I even faff. Can you see that you've now got a totally different feel? I've added some light text. The text is not overpowering. You don't want it to be too overpowering. So what I'm trying to show you is one stamp set can give you so many possibilities. Right. What I'm going to do then is take my Quill Ends, which if you haven't got any pen nibs, you've got these pen nibs here to put in the middle of your butterfly. So let's try and lift the stamp, which seems to be difficult. Place that in. So let's use the Quill Ends. So ink that stamp, and I'm inking the pen nib. Just can't decide whether I'm using it or not. I've got enough card there. There's nothing like scrimping on card, is there? There's nothing like being a bit of a skinflint on the card. Let's just cut that out. Again, just leaving a little bit of a white border, just so you can see that. And these pen nibs are just the right size. Not too big, not too overpowering. There we go. And then I can add my little bird just here, creating a little tiny cluster. So this, you know, is going to be a nice, clean and simple card that's not too... you could even stand your bird, forget the pen nib, you could stand the bird on the top of your clock if you wish. So I'm just going to add a little bit of colour to the flower that's inside the bird. And I'm even going to take enough time just to add a little bit of depth. Again, I will add some white to that, just so that we can add this here. So let's just... Now you can obviously add flowers to this if you wish. It's entirely up to you. You know, but sometimes a pared back project is all that you need without too much else. There we go. You can see I'm faffing because just to make sure that that's right. That's me all over. What wording have we got now? So let's have a look what wording I can use. I'm not pulling loads of stamps out, so it will have to be from stamps that I've got here. we go. So I've got stamp set 906, which is Art Notes. See that one? Yep, that one. So I've got the Art Notes on there, and I can make a little cluster. You know, I do worry about myself at times. Where's the little bit of... Oh, I've chucked it on the floor. Do you know, I was beginning to think that I was losing the plot then. So let's just use the word art from here with a black ink. And, you know, I'm just showing that you can make little cards as well. So just use that word art, just from the Art Notes. Just so you can see, it's just this word art here. Just place that back. Let's cut that out. Try and not knock the camera. So cut that out. And even on little cards, I do spend my time just taking my time. Just wipe that up so that we don't get in a complete mess. Let's just add a little bit of an edge to the word. There we go. I'm just using that black Posca pen. You can use your ink pad if you wish. I don't use the VersaFine Clair to edge very often, mainly because most of the time the ink stays so wet that I end up putting my fingers in the edge of that and then just spreading it everywhere. So I've got my art here that I'm going to add, and then when we stamped our clock, you can see that I stamped the little clock here as well, which is from the same stamp set, which you can see here on stamp set 733, the Temporal. You can see it's got these little clocks as well. So let's just cut out. This one. There we go. Yes, I often talk to my pieces of card, you know. It's just what I do. Don't ask. Right, so let's go with a little bit of colour. A little bit of the vermilion. A little bit of that colour. You know the colours by now. A little bit of carmine. And I'll add the darker colour later. So we go with the vermilion. See what I mean? This is why you have to check if, like me, you're only using one brush. Those of you that are super professional will have 10 brushes lined up, all one brush for each colour. I like to keep my space pretty clear without too much product on the desk. So I'm going to go back to that carmine, just add a little bit more colour, and then the vermilion. And because I've got that water on there, it's wicking out, which works quite nicely. And then I can just blend that out with a watered down version of the vermilion, just to get rid of those harsh lines, get rid of the excess. There we go. And just wipe that up. So I'm just going to play around with my little cluster of elements now. So I'm just going to decide how I want to place them. And I just want a little cluster of work. I don't want it to go all the way up here because it's about this little tiny cluster. I don't want to place it up here and then extend it up here, even though it still looks lovely, I'm trying to keep the little cluster that I've got. So just add that little cluster here. And what I've shown you is that by spritzing the Ecoline pens, you get a more watered down feel. And this one will keep with the strong colour. We'll give this a little bit of dimension. Like so, just to give that a little bit of dimension. Pull that up. You see, I can continue adding to the cluster if you wish. This is what I love about these stamps. I just end up playing continually because I can take it off the acrylic block and add a little bit more if I wanted to. So take this. So I'm just inking sort of the corner of that stamp. I've just inked the corner of that stamp. And what I'm going to do is, because I don't want a completely straight edge, so just dab that a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is just, even though I've put my 3-dimensional pieces down, I'm just going to add this. There we go. Just to my project, just to give a little bit more. I love how there's a little tiny touch of the cloth. Little clusters like this make me happy. So then I'm going to take my Posca pen. So let's take that Posca pen and add some nice clusters of white there. And then what we're going to do is just add this to a card blank. So that was 4x6. So let's just cut this card blank. So I've got this card blank that is just 4.5 by 6.5, as you can see here. And then let's just bring in, where have you gone? This is where, because you've not got a cluttered design, this is where you can bring in as well your little bit of washi. So you've got this, what you see this here. I always keep my little bits of washi that I've not used. I'll mention which washi shortly. And yes, I do faff. So I just add, it's got to remain part of the project. So I've just used my washi just to add the word grow. This washi is washi 46 and it's called Earthy, number 46. And it's got lovely words on there. It's got nature, you know, it's got branch, it's got garden, it's got bird, it's got leaf. So it's got lots of lovely words on there. It's got the word bloom, just lots of words. And now I've added that washi, so I want it to be a part of the project. That's it. So just add some more splatters. So I'm going to keep this more pared back. Let's add this little bit of washi just down here. So this was just a piece of washi I tore off, because just to give that balance. So let's just add this now to our card. And what I'm trying to show you is that one stamp set can spark off so much inspiration. So let's add this to a 4.5 inch by 6.5 inch card blank. The actual piece of card I was working on was 4 by 6, which is the same as the snippets, which also shows you how you can work with the snippet size and still create a card that makes a statement. It's just so that you know. Just press that down, and then just so that the card is included, make sure I add a few splatters to that edge there and this edge here. Let's just give that a wipe, and let's bring in the 2 cards. So you've got this card that was the more detailed card that we sort of placed it on the edge, and then you've got the more pared back one with the same stamp set mixed with other stamps to show how versatile one stamp set 733 can be, and just to show that I never forget the older stamps. So love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.